Talk about evidences for evolution. So what are the evidences? Mainly remember, for the evidences of evolution, we should have regarding fossils. Fossils are the very important evidences of evolution. And right, next, embryological evidences. For example, coming to the embryological evidences. So the young chimpanzee will be very similar to the human skull. The skull of young chimpanzee will be very similar to the human skull. These are certain evidences embryologically we can give, and certain functions of the organs, certain anatomy of the organs, so like these are the evidences when it comes to evolution. Evidences that evolution of life forms indeed take place on Earth, as in case of many quarters. Like fossils are remains of hard parts of the life forms found on rocks. Rocks form the sediments, and the cross section of the earth crust, if under the cross section of the earth crust, indicates the arrangement of sediments based on the eras, periods, and epochs. So, one over the other during the long history of Earth. So, different aged rock sediments contain fossils of different life forms. If you see that sediments of that era, you can see that rocks on the fossilized organisms, so which was being dead during that time period, who probably died during the formation of particular sediment. So some of them appear similar to the modern organisms. So they represent extinct organisms like dinosaurs, for example. Dinosaurs are extinct, and the study of fossil, we call it as paleontology, is different sedimental layers indicates the geological period when what they exist. So if you see that fossils at that particular time period, so we came to know during that era or during that period they exist. So this study showed that life forms are varied over time, because over time different life forms are originated. Whoever have better fitness, they got survived. Whoever don't have a better fitness, they died and they extinct. And certain life forms are restricted of certain geological time spans. Hence, new forms of life are arranged at different times in the history. Yes, all this called paleontological evidences. So fossil is the first thing for the evolution evidence. So we call that as paleontological evidence. So if it is, like for example, the evidence is mostly from animals, we call it as paleozoology. If the evidence is from plants, you can call it as paleobotany. Do you remember how the ages and ages of fossils are calculated? By carbon dating. So can you recollect the method of radioactive dating and the principles behind the procedure? So let's determine the answer for this question. So do you remember how the age of fossils are calculated? So, and do you recollect the method of radioactive dating, what we use? So we can see there are certain methods to detect the age of the fossils. One is relative position of the fossil. Right? So the relative position of the fossil in the sediment. If the fossil position is in the lowest, in the bottom, we can approximately estimate during the era and during the period, we can estimate approximate time scale. And next, radioactive carbon dating. So in this procedure, we are using the radioactive carbon C14 to form when the cosmic rays of the sun act on nitrogen in the atmosphere. So apart from C12, and C12 is also used, taken by living forms through food chain. So because C12 and C14 is taken by living forms. Once the organism die, it doesn't take part any more carbon from the atmosphere. Because once the organism died, it won't take any of these carbons, right? So the radioactive carbon then decay at a known rate. So we call that as half-life. Right? Half-life. It's time required to reduce it to half to its initial level. So for C14, it takes 5,730 years. So measuring of concentration of radioactive carbon in the fossils. So comparing the concentration of C14 with radioactivity C14 and radioactive C14. So in the living matter, if the radioactive content is 50% than the content in the living matter, the approximate life of the fossil is 5,730 years. If it is only half of the carbon is present, it is 5,730 years. So that's how they will found the age of the fossil. So comparative anatomy and morphology shows similarities. So we have to compare the anatomy and physiology or morphology of different organisms. Differences among organisms today and those existed years ago. So between the organisms of today and between the organisms of this period and the previous period, such similarities can be interpreted to understand whether common ancestors are shared or not. For example, whales, bat, cheetah and humans. So whales are mammals, bats are mammals, and cheetah is a mammal, right? And humans is a mammal. All are mammals. They show some common similarities in pattern of bones of forelimb. These forelimbs perform different functions. So in animals, so this have a similar anatomical structure. All of them have. So if you see here they have given a family tree of dinosaurs and they're living modern day counterparts organisms like crocodiles and birds. So they believe it that birds have got originated from crocodiles. So dinosaurs are the ancestors of the birds. So if you see Brachiosaurus, saurus means lizard. So these were considered as a giant lizard. So Brachiosaurus. So brachy means arm. So if you can see that does have a long neck. So that's why we call it as brachy. So Brachiosaurus having long neck, and Brachiosaurus finally has derived as Tyrannosaurus, which means T-Rex. And we have the Stegosaurus. The Stegosaurus, we have a spines on the body, and it was evolved as Triceratops. And here we have that Archaeopteryx, which is a fossil. So which is a fossil. You can see Archaeopteryx is the connecting link between birds and dinosaurs. And here we have the crocodilian, which is reptiles. After reptiles, it got originated to birds. Pteranodon. So we have to remember these Brachiosaurus and Stegosaurus. We have Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus. So here Archaeopteryx is the connecting link between dinosaurs and birds. So remember, like usually the questions are given, Tyrannosaurus is got or evolved from Brachiosaurus, and Triceratops is evolved from Stegosaurus, and Archaeopteryx is evolved to Crocodilian. Crocodilian is evolved to Pteranodon. So these are the questions you will expect from this family tree of dinosaurs. And if you could see that we already have seen whale, bat, and we have the cheetah, humans, all will be having same type of humerus, radius, ulna, carpal and metacarpal arrangement, even the phalanges also on their forelimbs. Hence the animal of same structure, but they do different functions, right? Due to adaptation of different needs. So this divergent evolution, we call this as, for example, it is originated from the same point, means same type of organs, but it is doing different functions, right? We have the whale, bat, cheetah, and we have the humans. All are having the common structure, but they are doing different functions. This type we call it as homologous, means common point, and these are divergent evolution. So the divergent evolution, these structures are homologous because they came from same origin. Homology indicate that means they came from common ancestry. Other examples of vertebrates of heart, brain, they are also will be very similar. If you see, all this heart will be having 4 chamber. All this heart will be having forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. If you see in plants also, we have the same common point. Thorn of bougainvillea. tendril of cucurbita. They both originated from axillary bud, but they both do different functions. Thorn is for protection, tendril is for climbing. The homology is based on diversity evolution, whereas analogy, which means opposite, will refers to it has different morphological characters. Opposite, and but they both do same functions. They'll perform the same functions, like wings of butterfly and wings of bird. They both originated from different body parts. They are not anatomically similar structures. They perform different functions. They are different structures. They originated from different structures, but they perform same function, which means flying. So this type we call it as analogy or convergent. This point we call it as convergent. But because it is combined in a common point, and we call this as analogous, and this is homologous, divergent. And we have another examples of, so like eye of octopus and eye of mammals, they also are the examples of analogous. They both have the same different anatomical origin, but they both do for the vision. So flippers of penguins and dolphins, yes, right, they also have different anatomical structures, but they both use for swimming. One can say the similar habitat that is resulted in the selection of similar adaptive features, because main why this adaptive features is based on similar habitats they are living on, but towards the same function. So different organs but same functions. You can see the sweet potato. Sweet potato will comes under analogy, because sweet potato is a root modification and potato is a stem modification, which is an example of analogy. Right? At the same time, you can able to see the line of argument. Similarity in proteins and genes performing the given function among different organisms gives a common clue of ancestry. So these biochemical similarities point to the same shared ancestry as the structural similarity among different organisms. So man has bred selected plants and animals for agriculture, horticulture, sport and security. If you can see here, so this is the example for analogous. Homologous, excuse me. This is the example for homologous. They both have same origin, same axillary bud, you can able to see here, but they do perform different functions. Homologous, which means divergent evolution. And coming to here, they all have same origin, means four limbs, but they do perform different functions. This is the best example of homologous or divergent. So man has bred selected plants and animals for agriculture, horticulture, sport or security. Man has domesticated many wild animals and crops. Their intensive breeding program has created very different from other breeds, but still are of the same group. It is argued that if hundreds of years man could create a new breeds, could not nature have done over million of years ago, right? Nature took millions of years ago. Maybe man took hundreds of years ago, right? Because that is artificial and this is natural. Natural takes more time than artificial, right? Another interesting observation supporting evolution by natural selection came from England. So, in the collection of moths made in 1950, before industrialization, all the black moths, dark winged moths are died. After industrialization, white winged moths are died. Why this happened? So, this is all because of natural selection only. Because at the time there is no industrialization, because in 1850 and 1920, which means around 70 years of gap, no industrialization. And here you have industrialization. right? And now coming to the next point. So no industrialization means you have more white winged moths, because in the background of the white lichens the black winged moths died because of the predators. Yeah, when industrialization got arrived, so more dark winged moths. Because the white winged moths are died on the background of this black pollution. That is what one of the observation you can see here. Very, you have less dark winged here, less white winged. So white winged moths on tree, we have more white winged moths on tree in 1850 than the dark winged or melanized moths. However, the collection carried out from the same area, but after industrialization, that is in 1920, there was more dark winged in the same area. The proportion was reversed. So the explanation put forth for this observation was that predators will spot the moth against the contrasting background very easily. So if the environment is white, then that will capture the black one. If the environment is black, then they can capture easily the white one. That's what happened here. So during the post industrialization period, the tree trunks become dark due to industrial smoke and soot. Under this condition, the white winged moths do not survive due to predators. Dark winged and melanized moths survive because camouflage, they can exhibit the camouflage, right? So before the industrialization set in, thick growth of almost white color lichens covered the tree in that background. The white winged moth survived, but the dark colored moth was picked out by predators very easily. Do you know the lichens can be used as indicators of industrial pollution? So SO2, it is very sensitive to SO2, because if SO2 is more, then lichens will not survive. If there are more industries, then the lichens will not survive. So there will be not grown in an area that they are polluted. Hence the moths that were able to camouflage themselves. Hence the black winged moths can able to camouflage behind the background of the polluted smoke. So that's why white winged moths can able to locate very easily by the predators. That's how the population got decreased. They can hide in the background. The black winged one survived. This understanding is supposed by the fact that in areas where the industrialization did not occur, which means in rural areas, the count of melanic moths was low. In rural areas, the melanic moths was low. This showed that in a mixed population, they can adapt, they can better adapt, survive, and increase in population size. Remember, there is no variant is completely wiped out, right? Similarly, excess use of herbicides, pesticides, etc. can only result in selection of resistant varieties in much lesser time scale. If we use more herbicides, pesticides, only less varieties, only which can able to sustain, which can able to resist, those varieties only will survive. They are also true for microbes against which we employ the antibiotics, and drugs against the eukaryotic organisms. Hence the resistant organisms cells are appearing in time scale of months, years, not centuries. So they are the example of evolving by anthropogenic actions. This is also tell us the evolution is not as directed process in sense of determination. It is stochastic process, which means random process. Stochastic means random process. Evolution is not directional always. Based on the chance events in nature, chance mutation in organisms. It is not unidirectional at all, or it is not directional towards one side. This you have to remember.